So for a whole week, I'm playing basketball with two broken wrists, had no idea. It's as a comedian, it's a craft, it's an art form. If you stop doing it, you lose that muscle. I was excited about going to school because I got to play basketball. We were making these life decisions at 15 with nobody around us. Well, where is that sensation or that feeling that I would get from basketball?
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cosmic Chats. We today have the wonderful Bileko Wissa, and he is a filmmaker and comedian. But today he's going to share on a very deep level about a life crisis he had at 15 years old when he sustained a basketball injury and was on par to become a professional player, and how around him he did not have mentorship or guidance as what to do, and psychologically he could not take the fact that he could no longer play basketball. We're going to find out today what choices he did and how he is all right being who he is now. So how would you describe the taste of a banana to someone who's never had one?
The taste of a banana is rigid. It's long, but it's sweet. So it would be like, it's long, yeah.
Oh, long, it's long. I thought you said it's a slog, like.
No, it's long, but it's like rigid. It can be bumpy, right? But it can be kind of smooth if it's old. Yeah. That's how I would describe it. A taste of a banana. Such a random question.
Yeah, right. So when would you say you had your first existential life crisis as a child?
As a child, I think probably when I broke my wrist. I was playing basketball. I used to play it. Religiously. I thought it was a career path. So I played like AAU basketball here, growing up in Los Angeles, California. So I started there's a moment in time where anytime you do a craft, you start to like work at it, but then you start to get really good and you know that you're good. So for me, it was when I was 15. I would just always play with my friends. This is before, I guess, the AAU became like this really big business. So you just play with your friends for fun. But then a coach scouted me. He was like, hey, come play on my team. And this team won like all these tournaments. But the person that position I was going to replace, I completely dominated him. So my confidence started to grow. So we played all summer, did well, started to get like ranked. But my going into my 11th grade year.
And that's how old, for those who don't know what 11th grade is.
11th grade, 16.
Okay.
So I'm 16 years old. I go up for a dunk. I get low bridge by another player. I fall on both of my wrists. So I sprained my left wrist, but I break my left wrist. I sprained my right wrist. So for a whole week, I'm playing basketball with two broken wrists. Had no idea. Go to the doctor the following Friday. He tells me, he says, hey, your wrist is broken and your wrist is sprained. You're going to be out for 8 months. From that moment on, I lost all my confidence in basketball. I didn't know what to do because I identified my whole life as a basketball player. It's very, very difficult.
And that's quite common for, I'll say children. We'll just say children, minors, that they are really pushed and they spend a lot of effort doing sports. And then something happens before that sort of college, application time that either mentally or physically. So here, your wrists healed. It wasn't as if you couldn't play basketball, correct?
Yeah. So I missed a whole 8 months. So I missed my 11th grade, the beginning of my senior year. So it's not like I couldn't play basketball again, but when it's as a comedian, it's a craft, it's an art form. If you stop doing it, you lose that muscle. Like Paula, it's crazy to say I'm 36 and I've regained that confidence now in basketball now that what I had when I was 16. Like right before I broke my wrist.
You lost the confidence. So we're just going to backtrack before we go to the other part of what you said. You lost your confidence in it. And did you continue playing?
No, I just stopped. Like I was just like, I was like, I'm not the same Blako. I'm not good so anymore. So, you try to figure out and you try to be like normal. I mean, yeah, try to be normal, try to become a student and go to school and, trying to go to college. But my whole life, I was excited about going to school because I got to play basketball. Right. So that was taken away. I was like, I don't even know how to identify. Who am I?
And did you have any coaches or people try to talk to you about the block that had happened?
Yes, I had one coach. Like when I came in the following Monday with a cast on after the surgery, he said, "Oh my gosh, no, my point guard." So, the train doesn't stop. So he had to recruit somebody else. Somebody else moved up, play point. The team had to adjust, and I'm just sitting there watching. So not only did I not, I had to watch somebody else take my spot, but I had to watch my other friends like continue their development. While I was just, I'm just another guy on the team. I'm not Blako anymore.
And when did you make the decision to tell them you weren't going to continue playing?
It was funny. It was so I was clear to play. Okay, so going into my senior year, it was clear to play, and it was our first, I guess you would say not conference, but like the teams that you play that are close to you, like your league or region. And I was like, I'm not playing. And the whole team, and my cousin was on the team. He was like, "You're not playing." I was like, "I'm not playing." And you can just see how like hurt he was because that's how we identified as a group. Like that's our bond, as our relationship, But I was like, I'm not the same person. I'm like a normal person.
And when you had made that decision, did you then have family members or the coach try to find out why and help you out?
But not family members, because my family is I'm like we're from the Congo. So at that time, they don't understand this concept of like, why do you want to play sports? Like, just you go to school, like would look like that, like that's a fun activity, but they don't see it's not even the economic opportunity, but they don't even see like, hey, you possibly college can be paid for, you could travel, you could do all these other things that are in sports. They're just like, why you take this game so serious? Right. So it wasn't family. The coaches were more so like, hey, they were like, hey man, just stay around. There's all this other potential. But I just wasn't the same.
And so no one sat down with you and had to talk about essentially your identity to the game and feeling that you were replaced. Nothing was ever approached psychologically.
Oh my gosh, Paula, no. Oh, I wish you were here 20 years ago. That would have been great. No. What? Oh my goodness, no. And I don't even think it's their fault of their own. I just think like people don't think about that. I didn't think about that being traumatic until you brought it up. Like me and my friends, my cousin, to this day, we talk about it like, because before I broke my wrist, we got like a scholarship to a prep school, real big prep school. But we were 15. We were making these life decisions at 15 with nobody around us. So we're like, I don't want to go to a prep school. I want to go to a public school. Not knowing the prep school is like a bridge to like Harvard and Yale. You know what I mean? If I would have went there, what other, not even opportunities could have led from that. But I'm 15 years old making life decisions. Like there were students at the school that had like 4.5 GPAs. I was like, you can get a 4.5, but there's these, we know these schools that are bridges to like Oxford and all these, but I'm 15 and I'm doing this by myself. I'm like, I don't know.
And often people will find a mentor at school or in sports, but you didn't have that with your sports coaches.
No.
Right. And so part of it is, your parents didn't know the system here.
Yeah. That's absolutely it, Paul. Like, America's very scary. Then think about this is before the internet. So at least with the internet, if you live in another part of the world, you can kind of get a gist of a subculture, right? Because you have this phone in your hand. But before the internet, I remember an uncle told me it takes you 15 years to learn America. Living in America, that's what it says. Because we don't speak English either. We speak French, right? If they're the Western language we speak. So then come to America, then learn the language, and then learn all these different subcultures, just even to see like a sign. What is this? Oh, it means exit. It means stop. Just those little small minuscule things. Yeah, it's like if you don't know the sub, so then you have to know all that, get a job, survive, provide, and then you worried about this game. Like the game is like the 15th thing on the list.
Right, because you don't know what you don't know to ask.
Yeah, exactly. Because the coaches from the prep school would come to my house like every other day, and my mom was like, "What do these people want with you? It's just a game," which is true. It's just a game, but they don't see the other opportunities from it. It's like, no, because when you grow up in a dictatorship or colonization, you're just like, get an education, try to make life as easy as possible. They don't think about like the pleasures or the fun. You're playing a game.
Right. And none of the coaches that came and talked to your parents explained the potential of free university through scholarships of basketball.
One coach did, but my mom she just didn't understand it. It's a very, I mean, wow, she should probably be on your episode, talk about there's different traumas that they face, like back home, coming from like war-torn countries and stuff like that, where not that they're not reasonable, but it's just like, well, what is fun? Life is hard. You have to just figure out how to get through, you know what I mean? This game. And now with everything's more publicized with like how much money athletes make and all these opportunities that they get. And now I think college athletes are going to get paid. But at that time, you get an education.
And so you made this decision, you
Yes, ma'am.
withdrew, and you had an identity crisis. How did you respond to that identity crisis? Did you rebel? Did you get more into schoolwork?
No, it's interesting because like I didn't rebel because that's not my like personality. So I just remember like, okay, started college, but then I started to, you try to figure out like what other things are good at. And being a basketball player, I was always able to have personality. I always had personality. So I remember I took a Spanish class, and the Spanish teacher, she would have us stand up in class and repeat Spanish words. And I would have a lot of fun with it. And she would tell me, you should do improv. And I was like, what's improv? She was like, oh, improv is like Saturday Night Live, like Eddie Murphy. I was like, oh, I love Eddie Murphy. So when I went to college, I started doing research on comedy clubs, right? So that it's so interesting because my cousins would say like now, when we were in school, we were either the basketball players or the funny guys. So it just goes right in hand to be like, oh, I'm in comedy because I was being funny when I was in. Because you joke around, you're with the guys, you mess around with the other players and stuff like that. So comedy, I started to find that.
I want to track back to when you were in high school and you had this response of shutting down.
Yeah.
What did you then do? Did you stop hanging out? How was your relationship with your cousin if you didn't have basketball in common anymore?
Oh, I mean, good question. So at that moment, it just became like shoes and like video games, like that, that type of stuff, like girls, but because at that time when I stopped playing, and it was we started to play like the region. It was probably January to like March. So it was only like 2 months. So it wasn't like this whole. Now you know how basketball now is like this whole year-round thing. At that time it was just till March, and then he was trying to continue to play, but he's my cousin, so I was like, hey man, go play. And it was just more so like a weekend thing where I would play with them. But like in the like for the actual like team, no. Like during that portion, it was more our connection or my identity was like all the material stuff. Like, I love tennis shoes, so I would collect tennis shoes and stuff like that.
So did you find, or were your parents more having conversations about what you do at college and what a career? Did you find that there was a different tact that was used with you?
It's interesting because during that time, I remember my mom telling me, she was like, oh, she'd think about moving to Washington, D.C. I have an aunt that lives there. And at the time, her daughter, my cousin, was in at either Duke or University of Maryland. She's a medical doctor now. She was like, maybe you should move to D.C. we can get you ready so you can try to go to college. So that's summer. There's a possibility of me moving to Washington, D.C., but I was like, no, I don't want to move to D.C. Like, I don't know, something just kept telling me, no, I'm going to stay here in LA and I'm going to try to just figure it out. I'm going to figure it out, you know.
Did they move or you stayed or everyone stayed?
No, I stayed.
Okay, so you were 16, 17 and your parents moved?
No, 17, my parents stayed, but they wanted me to move to Washington, D.C. to live with my aunt, to be like, hey, maybe it's time for you. There's good schools on the East Coast. It's time for you to start thinking about like college and maybe I'm trying to become this doctor. I was like, no, I want to stay. Let me stay here and figure it out.
All right. And so you ended up going to college where?
So what's funny is I went junior college for a year and a half. And then I transferred to school in Virginia. All right. So I ended up going to the East Coast. But what I told you earlier, just to backtrack a little bit, how I was like, I started to do research in comedy. When I was in Virginia, you know, you're in a dorm room, you have so much downtime. I was Googling and researching comedy schools. And I was like, well, I'm from LA. That's just Hollywood. It's like right there. So I would be in Los Angeles and I would call comedy clubs. Like, okay, when I come in the summer, I'm going to do an open mic or I'm going to go to a comedy school or whatnot.
Let's backtrack a little bit. So you did junior college to go to where in Virginia?
Norfolk. So I went to school in Norfolk State. So South Virginia.
Then focusing on what?
Oh, biology pre-med.
Okay, so you're doing biology pre-med and you were quite happy doing that. What was the impetus for you to want to have the time and you found you wanted to look more into improv and comedy? Was there an event that happened at college?
Great, man, Paula, these are great questions. Yeah, because, you know, when you go to school, when I went to school in high school, my identity was basketball and being the funny, cool guy or personality. Not even cool, but it's like, oh, B, you're so funny, you're so cool. So then when I got to Virginia, I was just another person, right? I was just like, this sucks. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's funny, Paula. Fridays at school, there was like intramural basketball. So I'm there. I'm playing, I'm killing, I'm doing real well. And the kids, I would play with the guys on the basketball team. They'd be like, you don't play anywhere? They thought I went to another school. I was like, no, I go here. So that whole identity, I was like, no, you're still a basketball player. So you have all this downtime. And I was just like, well, I'm not going to try to play on the team.
And do you think why was it you didn't want to play on the team?
I was kind of over the process. Like, there's the glory of playing basketball, which is great. Like you're playing, you're winning, you're doing well. But there's the other side of like the travel, the constantly always practicing. Like if you're gonna do it, you have to do it. It's 24 hours, it's life. And I was so far removed at this time, might have been 3 or 4 years. I was like, I don't want to get myself wrapped into it or whatnot. Plus, I didn't even know where to start. You know, I was like, I can't even walk on or anything like that. So I wasn't even mentally there. But
so you had come from, your identity was associated with basketball.
Yes,
you
ma'am.
had this injury and psychologically it knocked you out and there was no reference or guidance to sort of bring that on track. Then you found yourself more immersed into getting an education in sciences, then on the East Coast. And now suddenly they see you as the basketball player.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
And you're like, whoa, but I got over that identity.
Yeah. No, Paul, I've never looked at it like that until the way you broke it down. That's exactly what happened. And here's what's interesting. I would be in class, so I'd be like parasitology, chemistry class. I would make jokes in class and make the teacher laugh. But still, doing well in class, getting these A's and B's or whatnot. So that downtime, I was like, all right, well, where is that sensation or that feeling that I would get from basketball?
So I think you were trying to find your bliss, your joy from the inside that made you feel full and connecting.
Yes.
So the connection was no longer the ball, right? Because psychologically that had switched off. Then, now it's switched back on again. Ooh, doesn't feel right. And then looking elsewhere, what do I do where I feel that connection? Where inside I feel the connection. And those who perform on stage, there can be various kinds of connections. Sometimes, joyfully through laughter, sometimes through insults. But there's a connection, which is very raw and almost primal, right? We, in our society, apart from the forum of a stand-up, there are not many situations which can go back to, tracking, ancient Greece, where they were there in the amphitheater, standing and performing, having, tomatoes thrown at them, all sorts of god awful. That, the Brits still kept going through Shakespearean times, right? Boo, get off stage, which we still have with pantomimes. For those of you, it's a forum where the audience is expected to participate. And that expression of speech, right? That expression of the individual and the feedback from the collective it's very hard to find in its rawest form. We have conventions now, such as, social media, if you use Twitter, but people are hiding behind the digits or, characters, as it were. But when someone's there in person, being able to say to that person and have that back and forth, this is a very primal, I believe, format that has been diminished over time. And the stand-up forum is one of the few that is still accessible to participate in. Like most people can take a class and try it out, right? And also it can bring up where people don't expect it. So you have this highly successful comedians such as Dr. Ken, right, who was a medical doctor. And people would say, where is this coming from? This seems left field. But it was always within who he was, right? And a big part of the performer on stage is who they are, because it's their voice of their opinion, their experience, right? Speaking their truth, right? And so you connected to, this is where I feel a connection.
Right. No, absolutely. That's well said. It's something within you. Like, just backtracking, talking to you, this conversation, there was always points of that, like that connection of always doing comedy, right? Or having I guess this talent, or this gift within you. It's very interesting how, like, you can how I didn't even realize, like, basketball was that connection for other people, but then, like, once it was gone, I was like, those moments I can just remember, like, trying to figure out, like, who am I, or how do I connect? I guess, how do I connect with people? Then thank God I was able to find comedy and find it.
Now let me ask you, how much of you are you identifying yourself through someone that stands up and does comedy?
Oh man, I mean, so much. I mean, it's interesting because, we're fortunate we get shows, and like, I have the same relatives that look at me and they're like, they're all now, like, sort of like the average Joes, where they have jobs, they have families, and I found that replacement. You know what I mean? I found, like, how me and my cousin were on the same basketball team. He doesn't have that replacement anymore. Like, so basketball's done. We're in our mid-30s. He's a family. He's married, right? Kids. Where it's like, oh no, I found my replacement. I found basketball.
So what is going to be different this time if the goals that you have through comedy don't come about just as they didn't with basketball?
Oh, don't stop. Keep going. I stopped playing basketball at 17. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I have a cousin right now that's 23 that's still trying to play professional ball, and he's doing well. And I was like, oh, you're not even half the talent I am. But you just didn't stop. I stopped at 17. Oh my God, you're 17. That's terrible. Oh, and what's great about comedy is, like, the more and more you do it, with more age and life experience, the better you get. You can still do comedy at 70. It's incredible.
So your lesson is to keep going, keep following your bliss. Now, with that, are there caveats of whether it has to have financial success at a point or you stop, or are you at a place where you know that you're simply going to keep going, whatever that looks on the outside, it is, whatever you have to do in between, you have to do, you simply keep going?
I would say this, Paul, this is a great interview. Great questions.
Thank you.
No, absolutely. No, I love it.
Which reminds me, everybody, please like and subscribe
Yeah,
if you
please.
like it too.
Follow and listen every week. I'm a fan. This is wonderful. Because these are good questions that talent has to like think about. And people don't even think about like how things in their life, how it affects everything. But to answer your question, first of all, it depends on what your goal is, right? My goal is I would like to be a working comic, touring comic, and possibly do a movie a year, whether I write it or I'm a part of it, right? So in order for me to do that, I have to continue working hard in comedy. I have to write my own like scripts, movies, and then try to build a team, which I am, so I can shoot it. But that's my goal. There's some other people.
And what about if you have a family and there are more financial requirements that you don't have as much freedom?
Well, I think you have to sort of like simplify it, right? Like I'm fortunate, I'm single, I'm not married, I don't have kids yet. But if a person has those kind of responsibilities, I mean, you have to talk to your partner. I mean, once you guys are married and you guys become one, you guys help each other out. There's, sacrifices, and we all have to make sacrifices, right? So, you talk to your partner. I don't know, maybe it's, hey, this year I'm going to do this many comedy shows and I'm going to, try to put a tape together so I can try to get management that can get me booked at bigger clubs, or I can do bigger shows, right? So
we like to call that, from our meditation point of view, efficiency in action, doing less and accomplishing more, right? So the hustle element then becomes more refined, and ultimately we have the viewpoint of not sacrifices, but surrendering your preference to another preference, right? Because a healthy, non-controlling relationship, which is not what we are raised in to believe. And if someone is around comedy, how many stereotypes are there? The stupid husband and the controlling wife. This is how it is played out. And these are archetypes that are perpetuated, right? However, if we fully allow each person to be who they are, and there is union that occurs, it's simply surrendering a preference, but that from that comes a higher conscious action, which is, as you would say, okay, I want to spend time with this person, so I'm going to be more efficient with the shows I choose to be in. Right.
Absolutely.
And so and then we adapt, because if we look at what's happened in COVID, right, and we want to look at this from a conscious point of view, there are people who have decided to leave parts of industries, right, and entertainment performing has been hit hard, like the restaurant industry. Then there are those who have adapted to be willing to go online, right? Those that have chosen not to. And then those who are sort of lost, right? And now as we begin to open in America, and I believe more Broadway's opening over Christmas and January, what's happening is, the old gatekeepers are attempting to come back. However, in the interim, those who have adapted now have exactly what you're saying, either film footage or followers online, let's say value points that they're not able to deny entry to, because this is the way things have been moving through. So ultimately having the capacity to adapt, right, to surrender a preference, to adapt with a choice, but that takes adaptation energy, right? That takes the capacity for the brain to be outside of merely fight or flight response, as in, this is it. This is the one I've got to get the taping of. It's got to be good. And then you come away with, there was either something wrong with the sound, or the audience didn't respond as normal because the person before you was really insulting. So you spent most of that set bringing them back up, right? And so these expectations can trip us up, as well. So this adaptation energy can shift the consciousness. And with this, because it is stressful, do you have any practices that you like to do to get centered?
I like to pray. It's funny because before a show, like, mostly have shows. Let's say if I have a show on a weekend, I like to play basketball in the morning. It makes me feel good. Like if I feel good, I do good. Um, it's pretty simple. Like, drink water, try to eat fruits and vegetables. Like for me, if I feel good, I will do good. Like that helps me centered. And then I'd like to have a good balance. Like I like how you brought up like that balance of like, there's comics that will be like, oh, I have to do a comedy show 7 days a week or be out. And I'm like, no, I try to do at least 4. You got to still be like a normal person, have a good balance as a person where you're living life, you're present in like the world. So maybe 4 times a week, 5 at the max. But it's like there's days where I just have to be just a normal person. So that gives me a good balance.
Finding that balance and that grounding. And of course, at Aware Meditation, we have a free ebook for those who are curious about what the meditation practice does. It's called Vedic Meditation Stories. And you will see the link pop up there. It's the only publication that has true stories from individuals that learned the meditation and it changed their lives. Awesome. And it's all part of our outreach program that we have, where we go to underrepresented communities to teach at no charge to them a self-sufficient practice that doesn't require them to change their religion or their beliefs. So if you were to talk to your 15-year-old self,
yes, ma'am,
what would you say, knowing what you know now?
Life is full of challenges. You're going to go through something, but don't quit. Be persistent, because that defines your character.
Having a regular discipline, which is, all goes back to, even with meditation, what practice I teach and I love the most is 20 minutes twice a day. Having that discipline, even when you think it's not going to work or I don't want to do it, actually is changing the consciousness, right? And helps us be able to have a clearer mind to be in the world. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us. If you liked what we had spoken, please put something in the comments so we can have this fabulous human soul back again. And we'll have all the links about him. And those of you who are curious about creative visualization, which is often used for sports and athletes, we will have a link for our next open workshop about that. And with that, thank you so much for joining us on Cosmic Chats.
Thank you so much. Very humble. Thank you.